Welcome back, everyone, to another edition of Ugly, Irresponsible, and Childish, where two industry vets talk about the unrelenting pursuit of creativity and the people, work, and culture that celebrate or suffocate it. I'm Mark Levy.
I'm Jeremy Baca. Good to see and hear and listen to everybody out there. Always good to see you, my friend, as well.
Good to see you too. And this is kind of this is a bit of a weird one. This is a very for me, and I think for you as well, a little bittersweet because we are back with episode five, the last episode, where we get to interview a true Hollywood, not just Hollywood, entertainment legend, Mr. Joe Eszterhas. And boy, oh boy! First of all, Joe, thank you again for being so generous with your time. It's going to be a tough one today, Jeremy, I think, because over the course of four episodes, we have covered such an incredible amount of just experiences that Joe has gone through, from life in a refugee camp in Europe to growing up a poor immigrant in America to his success at Ohio State, to the Cleveland Plain Dealer, to Rolling Stone, Hollywood scripts, best-selling books. There's been a ton that we've gone through, and not to mention our last episode. I'm sure you guys listened to just the heart-wrenching account of what happened to Joe and his father later in life. And the thing is, Jeremy, every one of these we've done, it's been, well, we didn't cover that. We'll just take care of that next
Yeah,
episode.
yeah,
But this is it. We've got to cover everything today.
yeah,
And there's, believe it or not, as much as we've covered, there's a lot that's left.
yeah, absolutely. And Joe, thank you, brother, for being willing to come forward with your own story on what is a really difficult conversation, I think, in some ways for
Well,
you. Thank you, sir.
parts of it have been difficult, but I've enjoyed it, and I think you guys asked the right questions. And it's been, and I say this measuredly, of course, because you're my brother-in-law, and I don't like to get this truthful in public. But even though I've abused you all these years, it's been a great pleasure to do it. And Mark, it's been great meeting you. So please.
Same
Likewise,
here, sir. Same here.
Joe. Let's just let's start where it ended in Hollywood. You're in Hollywood at this point, going back, you're in Hollywood, and you have this sense that you've had it. You're kind of done with the whole Hollywood scene. You're tired of the whole atmosphere there, from some of the studios to some of the actors. And let me know if I'm getting that right in terms of what point did you suddenly decide, this is kind of enough for me in this scene. I'm heading back to Ohio, because in Ohio is where the discovery that you had cancer kind of unfolds. So walk us through that a little bit.
It's a very complicated question and a complicated process. I think that even more than being tired of Hollywood and being tired with some of the things that happened on a very personal level, I was just tired generally and probably spiritually. I'd been going through an absolutely brutal divorce that had gone on for some time. I was drinking too much. I had just gone through this wonderful feeling and rebirth, thanks to your sister and my wife Naomi of 32 years. We'd had four sons in rapid fire fashion. The I felt that something was really missing in my life. Yes, there was all this publicity and quote fame and but much of that was tiring as well, because the interview process and the media attention was overwhelming. I wound up doing Today's Show 8 times, and every time they came to the house, they'd arrive at 3 in the morning to set up, and then we do the interview at 6 in the morning. I'd done Larry King all the time, and every talk show, mostly in New York, I'd done in mind-boggling way because underneath everything, I still really viewed myself as this refugee kid from Cleveland. And I'd done this lengthy interview with Lifestyles of the Richest Famous with Naomi. I'm thinking to myself, what in the sweet fuck am I doing here? The lifestyles of the rich and famous, me, so
Yeah.
all of this, and then life in Malibu. Also, the Bob Dylan with whom I'd done a movie with my neighbor. The whole bunch of people lived down the street and around us. The if Naomi and the kids went to the park, she wound up having a conversation with Tom Cruise. The My grown son Steve, he was a teenager at that point, would visit, and he would position himself at three in the afternoon by the road because it was at that time that Pamela Anderson jogged by wearing very, very brief bathing suit. Um, Things were screwy. I
Yeah.
felt
Yeah.
on a human level, I felt that something was really lacking. The I had I'd written a book on spec because I write everything on spec. I'd written a whole book on spec called American Rhapsody about the link between politics and show business in many ways. The lengthy big book. I loved the process of writing the book. There were no issues. No one made suggestions. It was a big book. The Knopf bought it and loved it so much that they made it a three picture deal with books. And it was such a relief not to have gone through the usual studio process, which was one battle after another as people got into it. And it was fun, right? It was really fun. The All of that went into a moment where Naomi and I are sitting around and we have these boys. We've had them in four boys. They're all little boys. And we go off on another big publicity trip, through the Midwest and through the East. And we start talking about the boys and what do we want for the boys and how do we want them to grow up with what kind of values. The the things that they were experiencing. I mean, they would go to a Will Smith party, and then Will would have artificial snow and a lion from Africa. They'd go to other little parties with entertainment people, so sons and daughters, and they would bring their Academy Awards and show them off. Now, it's very possible that I was pissed off that I didn't have one of those awards to show off in retrospect. But seriously, on a serious human basis, we were both afraid, and then my wife was a terrific support in this. We come from similar roots. She felt the exact same thing. Did we want our children to grow up with the so-called Hollywood values instead of normal, human, honest, no facades, no bullshit, in a Cleveland kind of way. We didn't know that the place would be Cleveland, but on this publicity tour, we went through Chicago, and we had a spare day. And I asked the driver to take us around the ethnic neighborhoods and the conclaves and neighborhoods because Chicago is wonderful for that. And we both loved it. But when we went back and started thinking about it, Cleveland essentially is very much like Chicago. There's family here. Naomi especially had a really blessed big family. I use the word blessed with the exception of Jeremy, of course. But the and then she was close to her family, and there was I was an only child, and we didn't really have any friends except Hungarian friends when we came into this world. But I saw the love that she had for her family, and I met her family, and I felt a great kinship with her family because in my mind and I think in theirs, we come from the same place, not just on a geographic, but on a metaphysical kind of level. So we said, okay, if we're going to do this, well, why Chicago? Why not Cleveland? Families there. Also, I was the biggest Cleveland Indians fan of the universe and the Browns fan. And then after my marriage with Naomi, we would come back occasionally for the World Series and all of that. And being with the people here was a kind of whole new experience that we both liked. And I know I'm answering this in a sort of a scattered way, but all of that went into it. There was also I felt Naomi came with a terrific amount of religious feeling. And she would take the boys on occasion to church. And then I would joke about it because I would say, well, she went to church with the boys. I was here with St. Mattress of the Springs waiting for you. Yeah. So I can't tell you that I really had the so-called spiritual stirrings, but I was beginning to have an openness to it. I was a lapsed Catholic. I'd been an altar boy when I was a kid. There was one priest whom I really loved, and it was a great help to me as I grew up. I said the eulogy at his funeral, and at his funeral, I met his secret wife and his two teenage daughters that he had a whole new life in St. Louis, with this so-called family. Um, the so all of that was happening, and I had those feelings, and she was terrifically supportive. And then my life had been very turbulent until then, with my cocaine years and with my drinking years and with all the women. And incidentally, I married a woman, who shortly after we had our vows turned to me and said, whispered, if you cheat on me, I will hunt you down and kill you. I took it seriously. So that meant a total kind of reform in my life.
Yeah.
But but I'm very happy I did. And then I was smart to do that. So all of that was happening, and we finally made a decision. For all of those reasons, really, that this was a good thing to do, and we came.
So, so before you go back, you have been doing a tour for a book tour for American Rhapsody. You've been doing all these interviews, and you start having this sore throat. You're still living in on the cliffs of Malibu, and you weren't unfamiliar with having polyps on your throat. You'd had that kind of issue before, I think. And now it's kind of irritating you, and you go to a doctor, and what happens? What does he say?
Well, it begins with we're still in Malibu, and I've had a history of polyps, nasal polyps, and they always come with a little bit of hoarseness and all of that. So I went to the best, allegedly the best ear, nose, and throat guy in Beverly Hills. And he looked at me and he said, yeah, once again, you've got a polyp. Nothing to worry about. Everything's fine. I think, okay, great. About 4 months after that, we make the move. And the first week that we're back, a very old friend of mine, Gail Messerman, and I are talking, and she hears my voice, and she said, Joe, I don't like the way you should know me forever. I don't like the way your voice sounds. And I said, well, Gail, I've just come off the big publicity thing. I've never shut my mouth for a month at a time, and that's probably what it comes from. And she, God bless her, says, I just don't like it. Please, Joe, as a personal favor to me, I've got a good guy who's a throat guy. Go see him. I'll call him, and you can see him tomorrow, and it's just one exam. And almost to humor her, I say, okay. So Naomi and I go see this doctor's name is Bob Katz, in Cleveland, and he does the check, and he looks just a basic check. He looks at my throat and looks at my nose a little bit, and he turns to us, deadpan, and says, "You have stage 4 throat cancer. You need surgery immediately." And we were to say that we were riven by what he said and is understating it. Things were moved very quickly. Of course, the first thing I did with the diagnosis is make sure we stopped at a bar, and I had 4 gin and tonics immediately. But we saw the best throat guy at the Cleveland Clinic the day afterwards. He confirmed the diagnosis. He said, I have to think about what to do. couple of days later, we saw him again, and he said, "Well, this is between 3 and 4, and I think it's closer to 4. And there's a surgery that's been done in Switzerland. Um, I've never done it, but I think I can do it, but I've never done it." Um,
But thankfully, Joe, with this diagnosis, thankfully
this guy
you
wouldn't.
are at the point with the diagnosis, you were at the point where it hadn't spread. It was still local
It
too.
hadn't spread. He was worried about lymph nodes around it.
Sure.
But as far as he saw, even we're okay with those lymph nodes. There was a controversy, Mark, the whether I should see a radiation guy or stick with Marshall. Marshall said, if you
Right.
see the radiation guy, I'm going to be working with burned territory. Please don't do that because I'm it will immediately limit me. And the radiation guy was equally adamant that we do the radiation. So there's a big decision to be made. I trusted Marshall Strom very much. He's a former Army surgeon who'd been the surgeon, as the throat surgeon for many, many years. He was the head of the whole department at the Cleveland Clinic, and I trusted him. So okay, we'll do the surgery. Before they could do the surgery, because I talked to them very truthfully, and they also saw it on my physical stuff. They had to dry me out with a total dry out system before they could touch it. At the end of which, I think a 10-day period, I saw little creatures scuttling around on the floor. And as I complained about this, Marshall said, "Great, that's exactly what we wanted to do." So we did it. Understand that all of this happened before we were really unpacked here. There were still suitcases and boxes all over the place. Naomi, God bless her, at that moment didn't have any help. We had to get help then. 4 boys, the guy in the hospital with cancer. I mean, it was just a horrible, terrible situation. The Marshall, when he did the surgery, he had to take a muscle out of the left side by the neck and stretch it into what was left of the larynx, and hope that it holds. When he first saw me in the recovery room, and he looked at me, and he said, "Talk to me for 10 seconds." And I talked to him for 10 seconds. And he goes, as I say, he was an army surgeon. So the conversation was something like, "Well, just tell me the truth. What the fuck do you see?" And he laughed and he said, "What I see is that it hasn't snapped." And that's the big fear, that it snaps. And so far, it's very good news that it hasn't so far. Then it was a sort of a 6 to 8 month lengthy recovery. I couldn't die to trach all the time. I couldn't really speak. I had to use a child's toy and do it in writing. When it started improving, it was a high squeak that was there for about another 6 months, and then descended into a Brando like depth. And then with over time, it cleared itself up. And thankfully, he did get all of it. The lymph nodes were fine, and knock on wood, praise God, it hasn't come back. Um,
How did your kids react to what was going on?
I'm
You
sorry.
know, your kid. How did your kids react to what was going on? Were they
They were
frightened? Were
very,
they?
they were very little. They had a big traumatic moment, and because we tried to shield them from the seriousness of it,
Sure.
like a total schmuck. After being back, I'm guessing about a couple weeks to a month. There was a baseball park near a little field, a school field nearby. So I said, "Let's go out there and play catch guys," right? So I still have a trach in my throat at this point. And we started playing catch, and my oldest son goes up to bat, and I'm at the pitcher's mound and throwing, lofty little things at them. But Joey hits one, and it's a line drive that hits my throat. The the drake slips out and stuff. Naomi's trying to fix it on the football field.
Jesus
That was
Christ.
Wow.
that was the dumbest moment in terms of
Man.
what I possibly could have done. But I don't claim generally, I try not to claim being any kind of genius because of my Hungarian roots. But that was really dumb.
Hey,
There was another moment that was equally dumb where some guy, the plane dealer, put the fact that we moved back on the front page and sent a helicopter up to take a picture of the house. This is so from that point on, our privacy was being invaded by all kinds of stuff. Yeah, one day I'm upstairs and bare chested. I can hardly talk. I'm taking all kinds of medicines. And as I glance out the window, I see a guy out there taking photographs of the boys who are playing on the driveway. Right. And I said to Naomi, when was this? What's going on with the kids? Who is this guy? She didn't know. So I come down, bare chested, barely dressed, my hair like I'm sure like some kind of crazy man. And then he's squeaking, like this guy's here, and I start squeaking at him in four-letter words. And he takes it seriously because I guess I look threatening enough. And he said, well, he's from the local real estate magazine doing a feature spread on the house being sold. So, I said a few indiscreet and ugly words to him, and he went running down the driveway and left. So we were dealing with all kinds of things like that at the same time.
hey, Joe, what was I'm sure there was some discussion about this. What was your prospect if that surgery didn't work? And you had to agree to the surgery, and what was your prospect if you didn't do that? Did they
Um, well, the if it hadn't worked, then radiation would have been the next step. But the at that point, the because it was between 3 and 4, closer to 4, I don't think past the radiation there was much left after that.
would you have been able to talk?
Well, I probably wouldn't have been able to live if because of where it was.
Yeah.
And it was a taboo subject. We went as far as the radiation, but I don't think we had discussions about what to do after that.
Okay. So you go ahead, Mark. I didn't know if you had a question. Oh,
No, I'm just kind of having a traumatic moment as I'm hearing this. I'm kind of reliving, my own diagnosis,
Of course.
and the fear, the those you always hear about them, and I know they've been around forever, but those stages of grief, are absolutely fucking for real. The bargaining, the denial, the fear, the acceptance. You just go through such a whirlwind of emotions, and
Mm.
Joe, it sounds like the way you've talked about Naomi since we first started speaking together. Uh, you know, your support network is everything. The doctors obviously are doing their job. All the healthcare workers, the nurses, the practitioners, they're all doing their job. But I without even knowing you, I know that if it wasn't for Naomi and the support that she was able to give you, you probably wouldn't be here right now.
Absolutely, no doubt, absolutely. The on reflecting on all of it at the age of 82, there are two main ingredients to why I'm still here: my wife and Jesus Christ, together. She was amazing. She did everything. She dealt with these kids. She did which was a full-time total thing, of course, considering their ages. And she did everything. Besides inspiring me, she physically did everything. And I think that we were very lucky that we had met. We were lucky that we had such a somewhat overwhelming and semi-public romance in the process. And the without her as the person to hold on to. And I think what you're saying, Mark, was that we desperately need to hold on to something in moments like that, especially in moments like that are that life-threatening. And she was the main person I held on to. I also held on to Jesus Christ, but in Jesus Christ of Nazareth, very much as both God and man. And I rediscovered this person because of my own my own fears, and the but because of the two of them, very much because of the I was able to get through.
Hey,
Uh,
hey Joe.
and
Yeah.
You so for people that know the Eszterhas lore, especially much of what we've been talking about, some heads are probably popping out there. So here's the sexual provocateur, the drinker, the drug abuser, the smoker, the partier, the renegade, and now he's talking about Jesus Christ of Nazareth.
Yeah.
So
And
tell them,
I want to
yeah,
take that one further
okay, go ahead.
because, in speaking to you, in reading what you've written, especially in Hollywood Animal, your work for Israel, your deep friendship with, people of the Jewish faith. I'm reminded of the line from, Victor Victoria, a woman pretending to be a man, pretending to be a woman. I feel like if I was looking at your life, you're like a Christian pretending to be a Jew, pretending to be a Christian. Like those things have kind of like all come to embody themselves in you. And I'm curious broadly how you kind of reconciled at this point anyway in your life your faith with the reality of what's going on around you. And how did you rediscover that?
it's a good question. The I watched my mother's faith as she died. And I was with my mother until the moment she died.
Of cancer.
She died of ovarian cancer. And I saw the trust and faith that she put. She was totally Christ-centric. And she saw that her favorite book was something called The Imitation of Christ by Thomas à Kempis, which is a Christian classic. And as a matter of fact, I read the same book in the course of my progress with my illness. But I saw that, and I felt, interestingly, in the period that I talked to you about before we left, I saw Naomi's fate, and I felt back then, before I was diagnosed, of course, a kind of divine stirrings about because my life seemed empty in some ways in LA. I read a couple things. And then when I did, the interesting thing about discovering Jesus Christ is really was from the beginning, it was discovering Jesus of Nazareth. I read the history very carefully. Jesus of Nazareth was a Jewish zealot who was in a freedom fight against the Romans. The Romans crucified him. As they crucified 100 other Jewish freedom fighters, fighting and putting their lives into this fight against this cruel and oppressive monolith. The my Yes, I believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. But I have great respect for him as a man. And in terms of how he became what I was telling honorary Jew, the fact that he was a Jewish freedom fighter made a lot of sense to me and meant a lot to me. The, I have and have had real problems with the Catholic Church because it was an anti-Semitic church for much of its existence, including in the Second World War, where Pius XII was known as Hitler's Pope, and where after the war ended, many of the Nazi war criminals, including Joseph Mengele, fled and got to places like Portugal wearing monks through what was called the Vatican rat line. Okay, and it was also has been my firm belief that when the Bible says that Jesus was true God and true man, he was also true man, and let's take that seriously. He wasn't some celibate Fred Rogers character, nor in my mind did he stand for do not resist evil. If we wouldn't resist evil, we'd be living under Hitler, and with the kids would be named Adolf and all of those things. He was a tough guy, and that as I learned more and more about it, it gave me even more resolve to get to the point where I said, well, this man, Jesus of Nazareth, is my friend. And I like talking to him and I like reading about him. And I listen to what he says. And occasionally he says things, but he says things like, don't fuck it up and, be real
Joe, but
about what you're doing and
yeah,
all of that. He's a pal. We're friends.
Joe, there was
But
a
You
yeah, I'm
often
sorry.
have to.
That really, the combination of Naomi and Jesus of Nazareth got me through all of that. You know?
I don't know if this is going to be a weird question. We've touched on this in previous episodes. Um, do you sometimes have to pick sides, or are I guess what I'm asking is the voice you hear from Jesus, does that conflict, and when does that conflict with the twisted little man? And are they often whispering to you at the same time with different opinions on different things?
The twisted little man, in my opinion, as I know him, and I know him like very few other people do, the twisted little man is his feeling. I'm convinced at times that he himself is an agnostic Catholic. So we get along well, and Jesus gets along well, and that makes us well, I think.
Gotcha.
Joe, you actually, I know you talk about uh, Jesus, but there was a moment when you're standing out on the road walking, or you're walking on a road as you did during your journey with cancer. You're out there walking, and something occurs where you actually see a vision. And this is going to be, people are going to go, "What the hell?" It's almost supernatural in nature. But that was you can point to a moment where you had this experience that you feel was Jesus. Tell us a bit about that moment.
I don't. Well, let me do it. It's not quite a vision. I think it's a kind of illumination that happened to me.
Okay.
About a week or 10 days after I got out of the hospital, I started trying to walk around the neighborhood, and not big walks, but a couple blocks, and trying to get through there and back with my trach, of course. And on this particular day, it was like 90 degree, brutally hot day, so I went out bare chested and just with my shorts on. Sweat was just streaming off of me. And near to the point of blinding me. And I sat to sit down. There was some kind of a stump of some kind that's on the little street nearby, very close, only about a block away. And I started to cry. Um, the uh, the and I looked around and opened my eyes and I saw this blinding light, absolutely blinding, where I had to close my eyes. And I was crying, and I suddenly said, "Please help me, please help me." And it was a deeply moving moment. I felt that it was, I didn't say that in my mind, but I felt that it was like an appeal to God. The and the blinding light slowly became normal, and I got up and came back, and by the time I came back, I'd stopped crying. But during the course of all of that, during the whole course of it, I cried, I cried, I seriously cried like 4 or 5 times through the course of the whole thing. The But as people say, cancer ain't for sissies, and that's certainly true. And I feel myself very, very lucky because I didn't need radiation, I didn't need chemo. They got it all with that surgery. And the issues that I had were related to the trach and all of that. They had to do a subsequent surgery because he saw something in my throat that he didn't like, but it was just scar tissue from the previous surgery. So,
Joe,
um,
when
Joe, do you? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jeremy.
well, just very quickly, because I want to just when you saw this light, was there a comfort to you? Because you say then I just walked home. But there a comfort? Did you get an answer when you said, "Please help me"? Did you say to Naomi, "Something happened out there," or
so I told her about the light. Absolutely, I didn't the blinding light stopped blinding me, and I stopped crying. So when I came back, I stopped crying and I felt sort of reassured in some way.
Okay.
But there wasn't a vision. It was just an illumination. I use that word because in some ways, I think it was an educational illumination, illuminated something that was deep inside me that I hadn't really looked at before then.
Yes.
Mm.
Um,
Joe,
I'm sorry, go on, Mark. Go
do
on.
you think that you would have had in some form this spiritual awakening if you hadn't gotten sick?
Mm. Well, good question. I hope that I would have because my life has been enriched having it. The and it's given me more of a sensitivity and empathy, the a humanity with sometimes with the way I treated people. The And I think those are all. And Naomi has a phrase that I think is probably valid, and she now says she says that Joe is a kind and gentler Joe, and I think that's probably true, and I think that's the great result of the illumination that happened and continues to. I think she's right, and when I look back at some of the Hollywood stuff, like one of the things that I deeply regret is my argument with Arthur Hiller. Really respected him. He's a terrific director, and in the middle of a high-pitched Hollywood argument over a script, I called him a doddering old fuck. Um, those words, as I get older, are
Yeah.
heard more and more. So,
Hey,
but
hey, Joe, you now have gone through this enlightenment or this illumination, and you decide, among other things, that you're not going to put any more smoking in the movies that you used to have a lot of people smoking or some people smoking. And beyond that, you even reached out or worked with the Cleveland Clinic to introduce a program called Join Joe, and which led to an interesting interface with Rob Reiner. Can you kind of walk us through that, Joe, that whole part of your journey?
sure. Well, I was a kind of before all this happened to me, I was a kind of a pro-smoking champion. I put smoking in my movies, Basic Instinct, certainly. Some people correctly, I said it was almost like there's almost an ad for smoking in it. I was really pissed off at being told, not to smoke when I started smoking when I was 13 years old on Lorraine Avenue. I thought it was, the culture itself felt repressive to me, and I resented it on every level. Now, I get throat cancer and I survive it, and I do go through my illumination, and I start thinking seriously about, what damage had I done to others. In some ways, there was a kind of a grotesque, fun beer reflection of which on a much greater level my father had done, because he did these writings that could have killed people and probably did, and I certainly did films where I glamorized smoking in a certain sense. I got to know some of the people at the top levels of the clinic. And then we started after my recovery. Marshall Strom especially started talking about smoking and how he had seen so many cases and all of that. He never drew my attention, but he didn't have to my position, So then the Cleveland Clinic had a terrific PR woman named Angela Kaplan, she and I began talking, and she came up with the notion of doing a public anti-smoking campaign that I would lead called Join Joe. And we did that, and we began setting it up, and we went out to LA, and to do a little film, which would have been a PSA announcement in theaters around the country. And when we were in LA, filming it, I went to see Rob. I never met Rob Reiner before, but he and I had heard of each other, because Rob was the anti-smoking champion in the world at that point. He was very, very public and successful. So I went to see him, and we had a nice, lengthy conversation. I basically said to him, "What can I do here to help? Because I feel like I made a horrendous mistake with this stuff." And he said, "Join me." He said, "Let's do it together. Do what I've done. Do it as publicly as you can, and just tell your story." So I did. And this PSA ran in 150 theaters for about 6 months. And I told about my cancer experience, and I did once again. And ironically, I did another big press tour, this time about stopping smoking. And did all the networks and all of that on all the shows. And actually, Chris Matthews, Hardball, sent a crew in here to do a piece about my cancer and what Marshall Strom did, and what I had done to stop smoking.
Hey Joe, that PSA, did you, as part of that PSA, did you say, "Hey, I'm Joe Eszterhas and I used to put smoking in movies"? Did you go that route, or was it that raw, or what?
Sure, it was written absolutely. That's what we designed it to be, and that's what the clinic wanted. Absolutely, just to be very upfront and say, yeah, and, I glamorize smoking, and here I am. I got throat cancer. Don't make the same mistake that I did. Stop now.
Hmm.
I remember saying on this that if it doesn't kill you, it's going to maim you, sooner or later. It was a very successful campaign. They were very, very pleased. The and I think it did some real good.
So here you are. Okay, so now you're at the other end, or I know that the journey is one in many ways that never ends, but you've gone through the worst part of it. You're now doing these PSAs. You're coherent again and with it, and you start writing again. You've lost a lot of the rituals that you used to talk to me about in writing, the drinking, the smoking, and all of those, and just being healthy. How do you sit down and say, "Okay, I'm ready to start writing again. Let's have some fun with this script"? Was that
Well,
difficult at all, or?
yeah, I was writing it throughout my recovery.
Mm.
I wrote Hollywood Animal here in Cleveland, throughout my recovery. I wrote 3 Christian scripts, about Jesus and about my book Crossbear, and I wrote Crossbear itself. And so I kept writing it all the way through. Um, I kept in touch with some people in LA that I liked very much. It wasn't on a heart level and on a personal level. I missed some people very much. My agent and big brother of 30 years, a guy McElwain, was still alive, and at that point, though not very good shape. And I went out there to say his eulogy after a while. But there are other people. The I was lucky with the books because the Rhapsody became a big New York Times bestseller, and so did Hollywood Animal. The I enjoyed it, and I kept writing scripts at the same time. Um, the As I got significantly better, my friend Andy Voino, who was a very successful, the head of Synergy and a successful American producer, went back to Hungary as the head of their film commission. And he said, would you like to write a film about the Hungarian Revolution, which a truly distinguished point in Hungarian history, where the Hungarians beat the Russians back for 12 days. And I said, sure. It was that pretty funny and ironic because the Hungarian parliament had denounced me after Music Box. And I had done some anti-defamation fundraisers that made a lot of noise in this country. So Andy, who was Jewish himself and who lost relatives in the Holocaust, decided it would be a pretty good idea to get me a couple of bodyguards. So as we toured Hungary for the first time, I had Michael
Wow.
Jackson's former bodyguard, and they carting me around. So I gradually, as I recovered, the kids grew, and I got very involved in the kids' lives. I went to all the Little League games. I remember I went to after about a year of being here, I went to a Little League game, a couple of years, I guess. And then this other dad came up to me. We'd been chatting as dads. And then one day he suddenly said, I mean, Joe, when are you going to start writing that stuff anymore? We like that stuff very much. When are you going to start doing it? So, things began to even to level out in our Cleveland lives. The
Yeah.
boys grew older. Um, I, I, I look back at Hollywood to a great extent with absolute fondness. The I think my whole life in some ways has been miraculous. Come on, refugee kid doesn't speak the language, doesn't know anybody. When we were in the camps, there was a saying because everyone wanted to go to America, and there was a saying that in America the streets are paved with gold. And as I grew up on Lorraine Avenue, the Hungarian, some Hungarians became very bitter because their lives were very difficult. I remember there was this mad Hungarian poet whose name was Achimera. He's totally nuts. And one day he stormed down Lorraine Avenue. I was watching from our window, and he pumped his fist in the air like this and said, "Where is the gold? Where is the gold?"
It's the cold.
He stormed away.
Nice.
So, but truly, it's been miraculous in terms of all the things that have happened and how they've happened. I am most grateful in terms of the course of my life, if I look at it, to Jesus of Nazareth initially, to my wife Naomi of 32 years, and to America, because the notion that you can come in here knowing no one, and if you work hard, you can accomplish something in your life that's really very, very special. I don't think that exists anywhere else. And when I was a younger man, I would imitate Pope John Paul, who was one of my heroes. When he would arrive in a country, he would bend down and kiss the ground. I've actually done that, when I
Hmm.
returned to America. Yeah.
That's that's an amazing point to make, Joe. And just for everybody with a creative passion, I know this sounds kind of trite on the tails of what we've just been discussing, but people out there are working very hard at their own crafts, and many of them want to give up. You wrote when people didn't like what you were writing. You wrote when Hollywood producers didn't want to produce what you were writing. You wrote
Yeah.
when your dad went through, when you discovered this horrible secret about your dad. You wrote when you had cancer. Writing is more than just a job or a craft for you. It seems to calm you, to feed you. Would you agree with that? That you keep deferring back to this one thing that is taking you from the refugee camps to the cliffs of Malibu.
Yeah, what I would say to the young writers is just write it. Write what's in your heart. Write what you see. Don't try to figure out what's going to sell and how much money it's going to make. Forget all that. I've never done that. Through the course of some things won't sell. I've written 30 some scripts and 18 were made, but that means 12 or 14 were not made. So what? Write the next one. The And of course, and the other thing I would say is write. Don't try to make deals. Don't do a pitch for something. Write the whole fucking thing. Just write it and present it to them. If they like it, great. If they don't, it's their fault. So write the next one. That's the most important thing I would just say. Write the next one. Don't talk it. Then write it. And don't give up. If you don't, if you believe in it, fight for it, because you have to look at yourself in the mirror on a human level. And if you keep allowing yourself that way you write that comes out of your heart and your gut to be fucked over, then you're going to feel that way. The Kurt Vonnegut, who's one of my favorite writers, said one of the smartest things that I know about writing. He said, treat writing like a priesthood. without the damn celibacy.
Well, Mark, I think in just I think those two last comments for our listeners anyway, uh, on the heels of this amazing story from Joe, don't give up and believe in it. I mean that, and fight for it if you believe in it. And two amazing last bits of advice from Joe, and a great thank you to, along with the Jesus of Nazareth and my sister, but America. And I think we often forget that, especially now. We got a hell of a country. Despite all the infighting, there are lots of opportunities with people that fight for it.
One other great thing about my wife is through the years, is she has shown great patience and understanding. And she has allowed me to lovingly abuse her brother, her little brother, all of
Yeah.
those years. So
Amen, brother. Mark,
listen, guys, thank you.
I'll
Thank
let
you.
you take us out, Mark, and say a final comment. And we'll close it up.
Yeah. Again, Joe, thank you so much for all this. This has been enlightening, illuminating, hysterical, thrilling, depressing, and ultimately redeeming. This has been a great 5 episodes, and looking forward to your next work. And I can't wait to talk to you again, my friend.
I would just add, I want to add one last thing on that, on the tails of that. Sorry, Mark, to jump in on at the end of your comment there.
All
But
good.
Joe, for those of you who don't know, Joe is still going at it at age 81, right, Joe? 81 now?
82, thank you.
82. All right, 82. Last year, he just sold the notion of a reboot for Basic Instinct for $4 million to MGM/Amazon. And I got to tell you, just from he lets me in on his visions now and then, and you're going to want to see that movie. This is not a promotion because it's far from being produced yet, but just I can tell you that Joe, your writing is actually more crisp and more provocative and more sensual and thrilling as it's ever been. So talk about keep writing. God bless you.
I I had nothing. This script was all the twisted little man. And it just goes to show that he can still get it up.
All right, and with that, we'll close
Thank you,
out. Thank
Mark.
you, everybody.
Mark,
See you
come
next
to
time.
Cleveland.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay, good deal.
Bye.
Thank
Okay.
you. I will.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Bye now.
everybody. For
Bye.
Jeremy Baca, this has been Ugly, Irresponsible, and Childish. Jeremy, I'll see you next week.
See you, brother. Thank you, man. Bye.
Thanks.